Oh, thank you, Gina. I knew we were going to forget that. I had to move offices, so it's not Sticky's no longer on my computer. All right. We go back to the first slide I'm supposed to be at. You're welcome. Hi, Susan.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, so get started. So welcome to the ETC Virtual Lunch and Learns. We're bringing them back under Gina from Seneca's guidance. She's been really spearheading it. I have the privilege of being the or host today, I guess, or the MC for today. So my name's Jana. I'm from Northern College, and today presenting are some Northern College faculty. So we're very excited about that. Please note that you can sign up, you can keep in touch with what we're doing as Education Technology Committee Lunch and Learns and all the other things we're doing by going to the web Lunch and Learns or the LinkedIn page. So feel free to connect with any of those, and we'll put them up at the end too. Today, and I'd like to start with the land information. Today, I am on Northern College's Hellebury campus. And so I'd like to do the land affirmation from our campus, but feel free to, in the chat, share where you're connecting from. So we begin to acknowledge that we are in the traditional and territorial lands of the Cree, Oji-Cree, Ojibwe, and Algonquin homelands. We acknowledge that these ancestral lands that we are gathered on, which continue to interconnect us all, remind us that we are all treaty people. First Nation communities now located on these lands include Matachewan, Temagami, Temiskaming, and Métis people of region number 3. I really enjoy spending my time out in this beautiful land, and I'm so glad to be here and share it with people. And I appreciate it so much. Before we introduce our today's session, note we have 2 upcoming sessions on April 16th and May 19th. And we would welcome you to attend any of these as well. And the other big one is if you would like to present or facilitate a session, we're always looking for new people to share what they're learning and doing with educational technology and share with us, because we're excited to share with everybody. So please consider sharing what you are doing. Before we get started, I see everybody is already doing this, but if you could mute microphones during the webinar, use the QA or chat to ask questions, and visit our website for upcoming sessions and access recorded webinars. That would be awesome. So I have the pleasure of introducing Natalie Dorval and Lance Males of Northern College, who are facilitating today. Natalie is a member of our Professor of Business and Office Administration, and Lance is a professor of veterinary science, and both are avid users of Padlet. So I'd like to thank them for presenting today, and I will turn it over to them.
All right, so the way we're going to run this today is I'm going to do the first part of the presentation for approximately 15 to 20 minutes and go through how I basically use Padlet in my classrooms. And then Natalie will take over from that point and provide additional information on how she uses it to promote engagement in her class. So a little bit of background. I'm a practicing large animal veterinarian, and I've graduated in 1992. So I grew up in a very traditional educational model, the sage from the stage lecture format. I started teaching here at Northern College on a part-time basis in 2004 and brought that antiquated approach to my lessons. Um, I did, I was going through this and teaching these courses and noticed students nodding off. Again, that traditional format. You can advance to the next slide. I don't have control here, so I got to remember to advance slide stuff on this. And you can advance one more slide, sorry. So why did I start using Padlet? I saw students falling asleep in class. The traditional lecture format, they were really long PowerPoints. They were drier than a nun's fart, and they were effective therapy for students with insomnia. And I was just getting frustrated seeing these people falling asleep. And then uh, in the around 2008, 2010, I was fortunate to participate in a facilitator training program as part of a PhD project looking at how adults learn. And that completely made me reevaluate my teaching approach. So promoting a lot more engagement and discussion while moving to that pseudo flipped classroom model. Approximately 10 years ago, I was shown Padlet and instantly appreciated the scaffolding that it provided for the lessons that I was trying to put together. So I will focus basically on that portion of it. And then again, Natalie will focus on the extra stuff. Next slide, please. So one of the parts about Padlet that I really appreciate is not only organizing the lecture, but it allows me to organize my lectures together. Every Padlet that I create is a lesson. It's given the course number and the lesson number, and I can store these into folders so that I can quickly pull them up. And I don't have to carry a laptop or memory stick to class anymore. As long as I have an internet connection and a projector, I'm good to go. And that has been, I've got, well over 100 Padlet lessons that are organized this way. And it's dead simple. It's no longer forgetting to bring a laptop or whatever. I don't have to worry. I can just get up and go with this. So the approach I'm going to use right now is kind of a cookbook format on how to create a basic Padlet in minutes. And we'll get started with that. So if you want to move to the next slide. If you have never used it before, you can go to padlet.com and decide on the format that you can prefer. Here's kind of the screenshot that you're going to see. There are a number of different options there. I prefer the wall format that's in the top left corner because that works really well for me. All right, next slide, please. So within Padlet, I actually had to do a presentation last week for a bunch of dairy producers. And so I thought, well, while I'm going through creating a Padlet for this, why don't I just kind of screenshot periodically and throw that into this presentation? So that's what I've done here. So the the name of the Padlet, here's where you can go into it when you're creating a new Padlet. You can see the circled red box in the upper right. Name it whatever you want. And again, for me, if it's a classroom setting, I would say, the course code and lesson 1, 2, 3, that sort of thing. Every single lesson has its own Padlet. And then a brief kind of description of what it's about. All right, next slide. I will often, for the sake of speed, go with the standard wallpaper backgrounds that they provide, but I do switch them out for every class so that I'm not having the students looking at the same background for every single lecture that I give them. So you have the ability by clicking on that wallpaper to open up, and if you go to the next slide, you'll see that ability. There's a bunch of different colors and patterns there, or if you want to create your own custom background. So because this was a producer meeting for dairy farmers, I wanted to produce my custom background. Easiest way to do this is to just go online, find a picture, download it into your My Downloads folder. And then when I get into this page on Padlet, I can click simply on the upload box. You can see it circled on the bottom right and import the picture, and it'll put that into the background. The next slide will show you what that looks like. So again, dairy meeting, let's go with a dairy cow. Now you have to decide on your settings for your lesson. And I do like students participating in class. I use a lot more of the old school raise your hand with questions. So I will typically disable the comment section for engagement, but I mean, you'll see some really good reasons later on why some may decide to keep that on. You can have them using emoji reactions to posts as well. So it's completely up to you, and you can play around with it and then see what you're left with if that's something that you would like. The other thing that I always do, if you look in the bottom right, the copy protection on this, I toggle that from none to I don't allow people to have any ability to edit this. I do, when I provide the material to the students, they are given kind of a summary PowerPoint of all of that day's PowerPoints put together in one. And there's a link to each individual Padlet so they can go in there and review all the material that was presented for that class. So I don't want them to be able to go in there and monkey around with it. So I turn off that copy protection on this. All right, next slide, please. So the next thing that you would want to do, we've named this our Padlet. We go into that first box and it'll say section 1 as a default, and you click on that and it allows you to change the name of it. In this case, I changed it to welcome. In a classroom setting, what I would do is I would have this typically say course notes, and I would have information on upcoming due dates or reminders for students, or if there was a discussion about an assignment that they'd recently turned in, I would definitely, I would put that under there. So it reminds me at the start of class that we need to go through this information. So I put that welcome in there, and then the plus sign that's below that, when you click on that, it opens up that little subject or dialog box that you can see, and you can type whatever you want into that function and add it to your Padlet. Next slide, please. All right, so you can see I created a welcome and I typed into it the agenda for that meeting that we had. And then I just went to the add a section and click on that, and it opens up a brand new subtopic. So I've similarly gone in there and I've named that introduction. And one of the things I always like to do is put a time budget into that introduction. It helps keep me on time. If I'm really passionate about something and carrying on about it, and I'm kind of going a little bit beyond, and I budgeted 10 minutes and it's taking me 20, it reminds me to wrap it up and that I will need to speed up on subsequent sections. So that is to help keep me on time. The other thing that I do really like about that is if I'm running ahead of time and I can sit there and say, oh, I budgeted 20 minutes for this and I'm covering it in 12, it provides me to add additional material to the course, typically stories about, times when I've just about killed myself in this job, mistakes that I've made, and it really allows me the freedom to do that and know that I'm still on time. So I would really encourage you to do that. All right, next slide, please. So what I typically would do is I would start off with that traditional big, long PowerPoint with a whole bunch of slides. And a lot of my lessons are 3 hours long. So you can imagine there is a lot of PowerPoints in those. So before I start the Padlet, I go in there and I start breaking that PowerPoint up into smaller bite-sized pieces, often kind of looking to provide about 15 to 20 minutes maximum per PowerPoint. I find that's about as much as I can expect students to potentially pay attention to me without some other activity. So in this one, you can see I've just pulled up my ProVet Series 3 PowerPoint A, PowerPoint B, PowerPoint C. And if I was providing a lesson for a class, I would kind of pick natural breaks. So maybe neurologic diseases, and I would talk about those for 15 minutes, and then maybe gastrointestinal diseases. So whatever ends up being a good kind of break in your talk, that's where I will put that. Next slide, please. So again, you can see I've put in a PowerPoint. I've added that under the introduction 10 minutes. And so it's in there, and it's, to start that up during class time, I simply click on it and it provides me the opportunity to launch right into that PowerPoint. I'm here going and adding a section 3, and I'm going to add a little bit of material. So if you want to move to the next slide. And I've called this one the benchmarking health events, 60 minutes. Again, I would never do this in a classroom with students. It would just be way beyond their ability to stay engaged. So I would be breaking this down substantially. I get away with it in for this the presentation that I was giving to these producers, because within that PowerPoint, I have a lot of discussions built in where I'm getting a lot of feedback. So I could push it a little bit longer, but in the classroom, no, I wouldn't do that. Now, if I wanted to add a video to this presentation, so you can see I've got that PowerPoint ready to go, well, 2 PowerPoints in there. I click on the plus sign under the benchmarking, and it opens up that dialog box that you can see sort of to the bottom right. And that's where I can go in there, and if I've got a video saved on my laptop, I can upload it. Or if I'm using a YouTube video, I can click on the link feature, and it will open up, and I can post that link to that video. So I can incorporate those into the lesson in minutes or less. Next slide, please. So here is our Padlet again, just showing you how it looks. We've got the welcome subtopic, we've got the introduction, we've got the benchmarking. Under the benchmarking, we have a Padlet, or sorry, a PowerPoint and a short video that I can show them. So again, I use for the veterinary sciences, I use a lot of doctor poll videos and stuff like that. It just provides us that opportunity to kind of break it up for the students. If you're using sorry, continue to the next slide. And you can see again, I just continue to add to this, and under the posting that I've got there on the bottom right, I've put a discussion question and saying, working in groups at your tables, come up with a list of 3 common reproductive measures and rank them in order of or importance. And I will do this old school fashion in a classroom, depending where students are sitting, and saying, okay, the front right corner, you're together in a group. Front left, you're together. The middle section, you're together. Back left, together. Right. So based on where they're sitting, I put them in groups and give them discussion questions, and they need to work together and come up with some answers to those. And then I'll go through and have students volunteer their answers and discuss it as a class afterwards. Depending on, you can use it with your LMS system. I could assign them into groups under Blackboard. And again, I believe Natalie will show you later how she uses it for breakout groups within her class. But it does, again, provide them that opportunity to work in those subgroups. Next slide, please. I'm always interested playing around with this stuff and looking at new features that are always being added. Again, I've been using Padlet for 10 years, and they've added a lot of new features to it. One of which I kind of discovered as I was prepping for this presentation. So if one of the things that you can do is add an additional Padlet. So if you look at that dialog box that opened on the bottom right, and you go to the plus 16 that's listed there and click on that, it opens up that dialog box that's in the center of the screen. And so I can insert a Padlet into a Padlet. And you'd sit there and say, well, why would you want to do that? Doesn't it make it complicated? I would be using that for feedback. Now, in my classroom, I use a lot of Socrative testing, so I already have that built in. But if I wanted to do this with a bunch of producers, this is how I would do it. And it would open up a new Padlet. And if when you click on that build a Padlet, if you want to move ahead to the next slide, it brings up our, create a new Padlet screen again, what we started off at the start. So instead of going to wall format on this one, you can use the 3-2-1 summary. It's a template that's there. It's dead easy to use. So you just go and you click on that. And if you want to go to the next slide, it brings up this template. So you can see the 3-2-1 summary. This is exactly what comes up. It gives you some directions on it, but 3 things that you learned during the meeting, 2 things that you want to know, 1 question that you still have. And students or producers could put their information into this. They can post this stuff. What I like about having this as a separate screen is that when they start putting little post-it notes on your Padlet, if you give them that opportunity, it does fill in your screen really quickly. So this allows me to keep this as a separate screen where they can post their information. All right, next slide, please. So the other thing that you can see on the very end section, the recap and feedback, that's where I stuck that additional Padlet. And there's a QR code. If you want them to access that Padlet during your session, they can just snap a picture of that from your screen. So I would be using this Padlet projected to a big screen while I'm in class. A number of students would have it open on their laptop as well. But they wouldn't necessarily have to. And there's that ability to do the QR code and access that feedback. So, well, the questions on my part will save till the very end because I need to provide Natalie lots of time to go through all the. I use it in a very basic format. It works really well for me, but Natalie is using it for a lot of other different reasons. So I'm going to let her tell you about how she uses Padlet in her classes.
Thank you so much, Lance. And thank you for everyone who's joining us today to learn a little bit more about how to use Padlet in your classrooms. So I'm going to shift the focus a bit and show you how I use Padlet during class to support student participation and collaboration. And I want to start by saying I'm by no means a Padlet or an EdTech expert. I'm an educator who uses Padlet in my classes as a way to help support learning. I've been teaching for about 5 years now, and honestly, I still feel fairly new at it. And I'm always teaching hybrid or high flex, and some of my classes are small, some of my classes are quite large. And because of that, I like to experiment and try out new things. So I'm really excited to share some of the ways I've been exploring Padlet and how to use those to help support my own teaching. So in terms of access, I do have a paid Padlet account, but everything that we're showing you here today is available in the free version. The main difference with the free version is that you're allowed to have only 3 Padlets, and some of the file upload and video lengths are a little smaller than in the paid version. But what I would do when I was using a paid version is I would delete an older Padlet and then create a new one and just kind of rotate that way. And it worked fine for my needs at the time. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how to use Padlet to build community, encourage student engagement, support more structured discussions, and use Padlet for reflection and feedback. So I also want to just take a moment to mention that the Padlet boards that I'm going to show you today are actual boards that I've used in my classes, but I've removed student names and any identifiers, and I've modified the responses to make sure that I've kept everything fully anonymized. But you can see some examples of some actual Padlets that I've used. Okay, so one of the simplest ways I use Padlet early on in the semester is with a very simple introduction board. So here, students are asked to post a short introduction about themselves. And this works really well in courses where students are participating in different ways. So whether they're in person in a classroom, whether they're joining online or even asynchronous. Students can contribute over the course of the week, and then posts appear as we go. So it's a very simple and effective way to start building that sense of community early on in the semester. So let's take a look at what that might look like in practice. Okay, so this is a sample class introduction page. It's a rather small one, but you can see how it allows students to go in, make a short post. As Lance mentioned and showed you, you're also able to upload videos, record videos, add some GIFs, change the color. So it's nice because it also allows students to be creative with how they're posting. And here I've left the, if you look at the bottom of the posts, I've left the little space there where students can reply to each other's posts. They can use emojis, they can like it, they can leave hearts. And students have also shared with me that they like it because it feels very familiar to the emojis they see on their phone. So it's very easy for them to use, and also adds an element of fun to that as well. Okay, so next I'd like to share some ways that we use it for engagement. So I'll use Padlet sometimes during class, sometimes after a class. It all depends on the learning activity. So I'll give students a prompt and ask them to post their observations, add some responses or ideas related to whatever topic we're discussing. And what I really like about this approach is that I can share the Padlet board live and we can all watch it build in real time. So it encourages students to add their own thoughts and ideas. And I can even choose to hide student names or keep the names on there, depending if I want to make the responses anonymous or not. Okay, so I'll show you a few examples of how I've used Padlet to help encourage participation. So I teach a labor relations class, and this is one example of a Padlet board that I've used in this class. So I find that students are always looking for real world case-based learning. So I wanted to encourage them to go out and find examples of, in this case, it was labor relations or collective bargaining that are happening in real time. Okay, so to support that, I've created this Padlet board. I called it Labor Relations in the Wild. And it gave us a shared space to go in and post and share all of the things that we found. So each week, students would contribute news articles, videos, social media posts, or even posters that they found. And then during class, we would come back together and review the posts together. Sometimes I would invite the student who posted to share what they learned. Other times we would review the post and then just discuss it together as a group. So it helps to create a really natural starting point for discussions to happen based on things that are happening in the real world. Here's another example from a health and safety course that I taught a few semesters ago. So I'll note that this is a snapshot in time, and some of the posters and policies and procedures have since been updated. But in this activity, students were sent on a short scavenger hunt during class. So they went around campus to find examples of health and safety in practice. They took photos, posted them to the Padlet. My online students did a similar activity, looking at what they can find online on the Northern College website. And then when we came back together, we used these Padlet posts as starting points for our discussion. Okay, so from my experience, students tend to enjoy Padlet because it's easy to use. It feels familiar and allows them to share and be creative. Having said that, though, every cohort is different. So Padlets will work really well for some classes, but others, I even found I didn't get much engagement. So if you try something out and you're finding that's what's happening to you, where you don't get a lot of engagement, don't give up. Try it with a different group, try it with a different prompt, or even try it in a different semester. Okay, so the next way that I use Padlet is for structured discussions. So Padlet has a feature that allows us to organize discussion spaces in ways that really support learning. Similar to traditional discussion boards in our LMS, we can post prompts, collect student responses, and even encourage peer interactions. So we can set it up to use different layouts such as columns. So Lance showed us how to structure a course using columns. You can also use rows, grids, or even timelines to help us group ideas and organize the responses. So another advantage is that everything lives in one shared space. We can view original posts and replies together, which makes it much easier to review responses and share back with the class. So I'll show you 3 different ways and some pretty neat features on how we can use Padlet to set up discussion boards. Oops, went too far, go back one. So the first way is using breakout rooms. So here what I do is I place students in breakout rooms, and then each group is assigned its own column in our Padlet board. And I can easily assign those columns to each group, and it helps students know exactly where they need to post. So when we come back together as a full class, I share the main Padlet board, and this makes it easy for everybody to review all of the collective ideas where we've collaborated with the Padlet. So this is what the final Padlet looks like, or the main board. So when we use breakout groups, students will be assigned to post in one of these columns. So now I'll show you how to set that up and how we can use the breakout room feature for each of the groups. So here is just, I've zoomed in onto my 3 columns here. So all you need to do, it's pretty simple actually. So all you need to do is look for the 3 little ellipses beside the column header. And then if you click on that, it opens up this menu that you see here on the right. And then you're going to copy the breakout room. So once you do that, you'll be able to post that link and tell your group 1, this is the Padlet board that they're going to join. So this is an example that I've used in a training and development class where I've asked groups to list everything we need to consider before, during, and after class. So then when I'm facilitating this class, I'll use the LMS to post all the different breakout room links, and I'll label them group 1, group 2, group 3, and then every group knows which link they click to open up the Padlet board. So this is what group 1 will see. So it looks just like a regular Padlet board, and then the group can work together and then go in and post and share their contributions about their assigned topic. Okay, and then here I am back at the main breakout room, or the main Padlet board. So then when we reconvene, I'm able to bring this up, and then we can discuss the different feedback that we've been learning during the class. And I find this also helps to make student thinking visible and also keeps everyone accountable for contributing. And if I wanted to post the link to the main Padlet board at the end of class or after class, so anybody who missed class or anybody who's async can go in and have a look and even contribute, I just go to the regular menu that you see on the top and I click share. And then I'm just going to go click the main link to the board to share the full Padlet board. So it's a nice little feature to help keep us organized and also work in different groups. So another feature I really like is what Padlet calls submission forms. So this works similarly to a traditional discussion board where students are required to submit their response before they can see what others have posted. And I like this because it encourages more independent thinking and reduces the tendency to echo other responses. So with this feature, there are a few options we can choose to control what happens after a student submits their post. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so a pretty easy way to set this up too is if you go, here's a Padlet where I've used the submission form example. And again, it works similar to a traditional discussion board that we usually see in our LMSs. But here we can set it up so students have to make their own post before they get into the Padlet to see everybody else's posts. So I just click the share option at my top menu that I see on the top of my Padlet board. And then I navigate down to where it says submission form and I enable that. So I'll click the little arrow there to turn that form on, and then it opens up the rest of these options that you can see here. Okay, so here my first choice is to open the Padlet. So once they've made their post, then they can open up and see all the other student responses. I can choose to open up a confirmation page that can say something like, thank you for contributing message, or I can prompt them to add a second post. So with these last two options, students don't see the full board at all. And this can be useful for things like exit tickets or quick after class feedback to me, where I don't necessarily want everybody seeing everybody else's responses. So now just another note here where I have the circle at the bottom. So with submission forms, if I want it to work this way, I need to share the link in that submission form menu. And that's the link that I give to the students. If I give them the regular Padlet link where I share, regularly set up Padlets, it's not going to open the submission forms. So just a note there on how to share these with the setup that you want. So I just noticed there's a question in the chat. So can each group see what other groups are posting or not until it all comes together? So Gina, if you can let me know which Padlet that was for. Sorry, I missed that earlier.
For the breakout group Padlet, Natalie, I didn't want to interrupt you at the time because you're on
Okay, so for the Padlet breakout groups, they only see what they're posting. So each group will only see the column or the Padlet that they're posting. And then I share the whole Padlet at the end for everybody to see. Okay, so just remember with the breakout groups, you're just sharing that where you click the little ellipses beside the column, you're just sharing that with them, and that just opens up that breakout group for them.
Above that comment, Natalie, Phil's was asking about mobile devices. And I was like, yes, there is an app for it and you can put it in, but he wanted to know about user experience for mobile devices.
Well, I would say most of my students do use their mobile devices. They'll scan my QR code in class, and then it's really easy to use, and then they'll just make their posts using their phones or like their mobile phones that they bring in class. Okay, so thank you for those questions. Okay, and then that third option here with how we use columns is, here's one way that I use it during class to get student collaboration. So here with this setup, each column will represent a different topic, question, or perspective. And then students can move through the board and add their ideas to any or all of the different columns. So I'll show you an example here of how I've used it in a class where I wanted to get everybody to contribute to all of the different columns here. So in this example, students participated in a gallery walk where we shared ideas about how workplaces can become more inclusive. So this was a brainstorm activity, and the goal was to capture a range of perspectives from all of the students during this class. And then it opened up discussion about the different ways we can support inclusive workplaces. So if this was a fully in-person class, I would tape flip chart paper to the walls. Students would go around with Post-it notes and put their ideas on the chart paper. However, because I have students in class and students also joining online, Padlet provides me with a really effective alternative that allows people to participate regardless of how they're joining into class. So it really is a way that can help us be inclusive to all of our learners. Okay, and then my final example focuses on using Padlet to capture student feedback and reflections. So I often use Padlet at the end of a lesson to ask students to share short responses, something they've learned, maybe key takeaways, or a question they still have. So think of exit tickets. And this gives me a quick way to check understanding and identify any areas that might need more clarification in the next class. It also tends to encourage participation from students who may be less comfortable speaking up or asking questions during class. So let me show you one example of how I've used it, in this case for a 1-minute paper. So previously, I was handing out paper copies in the classroom for these types of activities. I would post a Word document or separate instructions for my online learners. But using Padlet allows me to have one set of instructions for everyone, regardless of how they're attending. And all of the responses are collected in one place, so it's easier for me to see what points I might have to elaborate on a little bit more in the next lesson and what questions they still have. Okay. So I'll just show you a neat trick that we can do with our Padlets. So I'm just going to go over to my web browser here. Okay, so this is that last Padlet board that I showed you. And let's say I'm in the class and we're using it and I'm finding this layout isn't really effective or working for us. So I can easily go in, and I'm just at the settings menu here, and I can easily change the layout to be a wall, to show up in columns. So in this case, it just puts everything into that one column, but then I could go and create some more. Here's a grid layout. And let's try a timeline. So here it puts everything in a timeline. And one other really neat trick is I can even bring it up as a slideshow. So if I just go up into my URL, and I've already typed it. So if I type slideshow in there, it brings up my posts in a slideshow. So I can also choose to bring this back to the class in this way as well. So a couple neat features there that we can do pretty much on the fly as we're teaching during class. Okay, so now I'd like for you to try one of the Padlets that Lance and I have set up for you. It's set up as a sandbox board. So I'm going to ask you you can scan the QR code. I'm going to share the link in the chat for those who just want to use their laptop screen if that's how you're joining. And I'm going to ask you to play around with it and try it out, and then you can see the interactivity that it brings to classes. So if you can grab a sticky note from the side toolbar, pop it in on one of those columns, and then just add one idea of how you might use Padlet in a class, and then maybe one question that you still have. Okay, so here's my sandbox activity. Again, you can use the chat. And for me to share the link to this Padlet board, I just go to, whoops, wrong one. I go to share. So those are the two main text menu boxes that you'll be using. Copy link to the sandbox. I'll post it in the chat in Zoom, so you can also click on that as well. And then, Jenna, if there are other questions in the chat that I may have missed for Lance or I, if you can let me know.
None so far. There's some comments that they really like the fact that students can be virtual or in person, and scavenger hunt can be physical and in person. And comments about they'd never thought about organizing a lecture around it before, like Lance does.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen that until Lance. Saw Lance's too. So
yeah, so a few new tips in there and neat features
yeah,
that Padlet has to help us out.
yeah.
And especially when we have students not just just online or just in class, it helps bring everybody together and create that sense of community.
Yeah.
Okay, so seeing some really great ideas here on ways that you might use Padlet in your next classes. So some really good ideas coming in.
Somebody gave us a happy face.
And some emojis there on the screen. So you can see how it's a fun thing to do too for students, where they can go in and post some pictures, post emojis, add some thoughts. So I'm just checking the time. So we do have time then for questions. So I see there's one there. What do students think about Padlet? In most of my classes, students really like it because it's easy to use. It's familiar. They have, as some students have told me, it's the same emojis as they find on their phones, so they're able to interact with their peers. And they like it because if we do a discussion board post, if I use my LMS, it's very difficult to show the whole thing. But they like it because they're able to see the whole board, everybody's thoughts and the contributions. So it really helps support those discussions too. And also everybody feels like they can contribute to the conversation. And I find a lot of students are more, they want to share in writing. Sometimes, like if it's anonymous, they won't be as reluctant to share with the whole class instead of putting their hands up and having to share verbally. So it kind of gives a space for all learners to be able to participate the way that they like to. Oh, and then I see a comment in the chat there that students love it. But, I have had groups where they didn't really engage with it much. So really it depends on the group of students that you have. But that's why I mentioned, if come across that, don't give up. Just try it again in another class or a different section, or even later on in the semester. And Lance, did you want to add anything?
No, I would echo those comments. I actually surveyed a bunch of the students about that, saying, well, we got to do this presentation. Do you like it? What do you like about it? And it was a universal, yeah, we love it. They love that it's organized. They like the timeline feature of it, so they can kind of see what to expect on discussions and where we'll be taking our break. So if I'm like, I just got a couple more minutes here. We'll take our break a little bit late today, but I'll give you your 10 minutes. They do appreciate that, so they do like that.
I see Leah from Loyalist has a comment that they have an institutional license and they're set it up so that it can be embedded into the LMS as well. So that's a nice feature. And there's a comment on the Padlet too.
So do we find distance students are more likely to use it versus in person? I have find it's the same. Like if I do a Padlet activity and those groups that engage with it, I find they're all pulling their phones out and then they're all contributing to the Padlet. But that's just my experience.
And
Others
through the
could have.
pandemic, I basically, it was really easy to pivot. I was using them, so I just continued to use them with online teaching during the pandemic, and it was seamless.
I see you have some compliments as well. That it was a great presentation and they loved it and lots of ideas.
Okay, good. So I hope by Lance and I just sharing some ways that we use it in our classrooms can maybe spark some ideas of how you might want to try some things out and use it in a different way. Or if you're brand new to Padlet, I would recommend starting small and then trying it out and then building from there. So just a few key takeaways here before we wrap it up for today. But if you're still adding to the Padlet, go ahead. I can bring that back up right at the end. So depending on what you want students to do in your classes, there are like a variety of different ways that we can set up Padlet and help support that community learning and really using ways to make their thinking visible. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time today. And if you do have questions for Lance or I, here are our email addresses if you wanted to connect or reach out with us.
Thank you, Natalie and Lance. Very, very appreciated. Great presentation. I'm sure everybody's giving you a round of applause right now. Also, I wanted to mention to everybody that you can find the Ontario Education Technology Committee on a couple of places on our website and in LinkedIn and via email. And Gina is leading us there. And we have some upcoming ones on April 16th and April 19th. And if you have something you want to share with the rest of the colleges in the province regarding EdTech, we would gladly have you present and help you organize that. So again, thank you everybody for joining us today. All right.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Jana, and everybody else. And thank you, Lance.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.